Welcome to Enlightenment Unknown, Life of a Spiritual Nomad. Join Reiki Master and Quantum Healing expert Wes Coons as he guides listeners through the depths of self-discovery and spiritual enlightenment to uncover the version of you we haven't met yet. Hello and welcome back to Enlightenment Unknown, Life of a Spiritual Nomad, about to embark on episode 6. But before we get started, Wes, what's been going on?
Well, Andrea, we've been working on some books and life's been kind of busy. We have a group healing session that I'm going to be doing soon. I believe, I'll be honest with the listeners, I don't know all the technology yet, but we're going to have that ironed out in a couple days. But if you would like to experience a long distance group healing with me, we're going to be doing that in the next 30 days. You can go to our Insta pages. Mine's VB Healer, and what's yours?
An Abundant Universe.
Yes, and you can go. We have our link tree there, and the information will be there. It's $25. It's going to last an hour, hour and a half. I already do long distance work on a regular basis, and I've done groups, but we're doing something a little bit different, and it's going to be fun. So if you would like to participate in that, you can hit us up there and ask questions. It's going to be fun.
It is going to be fun. And for those of you listening that might be like, oh, I don't know, like distance group healing, I will tell you I've had both in-person and distance healing from Wes, and it is just as powerful if it is distance as it is in person. You do not need to be in person to get the full benefit of his healing.
Yeah. And remember, it's not me doing the healing, it's Jesus flowing through me. That's how healers work. And I've got a client in Australia, when I work on her, if I'm touching her shoulder, she's like, oh, you're touching my shoulder. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And in this realm, there's no time or space. So you can cross that in quicker than you can think. And it's doing the healing work. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's incredible. So, did you want to give a shout out to our listeners?
Yes. We've got the best listeners and we get the best questions from them. YouTube is exploding. I love our overseas listeners and our listeners in the United States. Thank you so much. I think we're coming up on like close to 1,000 episodes being downloaded here soon. So that's exciting. And, if you are on the podcast and you want to click next to the follow button and give us a nice 5-star review, we would appreciate it. It helps us connect more. It gives our podcast some credibility. It helps with the algorithms, and it helps us connect with somebody who needs our help. And that's what we're here to do, is help change lives and change the world.
Yeah, so help us do that by just sharing it, talking about it with your friends. 5 stars. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a lady the other day, I said at the stoplight, and she rolls down their window, and I somewhat know who she is. We're not friends. And she's like, I love your podcast. I'm like, thank you.
Yay, that's cool. Incredible. No, you didn't tell me that.
Yeah, she's like, I love your podcast. So
I love that.
Thank you for saying so. I still don't know her name. Yeah.
But if you're listening, that's amazing. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Yeah. So what are we talking about today?
Well, you were going to tell us about the first time, maybe not the first time, but your interaction with Jesus.
Yeah. So last episode, we talked about the priest and helping me understand that he is not here to save us necessarily, to pull us out of the burning building, so to speak. He's here to love us unconditionally. So before we get to that part, I want to tell this other little story or segment. So this is probably 6 months in, somewhere in there. Linda had introduced me to Sandra Grace. Sandra Grace had been in the house doing some work, and she had introduced me to this young lady named Jackie. And she says, you need to go see Jackie. I'm like, why? And she always laughs. She says, more will be revealed. And then she giggles and doesn't answer any of your damn questions. So I go see Jackie. And it was interesting. it took me like 3 weeks to get an appointment with her. She is a massage therapist and she does other work as well. And so I went and seen her, and she said, I am going to take you on a shamanic journey, and we're going to find your spirit animal. So you got to remember, this is all pretty new to me. I'm like, sure, why not? It was Friday afternoon. I didn't have shit else to do, so I went. And, I'm laying there on this healing table, and she's taking me into this little guided meditation, and she's counting back 10, 9, 8. You can feel yourself starting to sink into the table. And when she gets to 1, I'm melted in the table. The room's nice and warm. And she has this Native American drum, and she's drumming the heartbeat. And the heartbeat is what you think the heartbeat is. It sounds like, I don't know if you can hear that on the audience, but it is the heartbeat that she drums on this sacred drum. And that day it was crystal clear. There was no rain, there was no nothing. However, through this 45-minute journey with her over this building off Alaskan Road in Virginia Beach, there was a thunderstorm that rained nonstop. And you could see it on, after I left there, I pulled it up on the map. And there was this one cloud over this one building where we were at, right? And of course I had my Jeep and the top off, but that's another story. But it's interesting how things will happen in the atmosphere. Like I'll hug Lakota and you'll hear a thunderbolt in the background and stuff like that. But so we're going through this journey, and she has me in a little meditation, taking me on a boat, and I'm rowing this boat to this island. So as I get off the boat, there's something coming through the trees, and she said, in a moment, your spirit animal will reveal itself. And she didn't tell me what it was. I don't know if she knew or not, but this black panther steps out, and she encouraged me to go up and pet the panther, and I could feel it. I as if it was literally in front of me. And so as I'm sitting there for a minute, connecting our hearts, talking to it, more so talking to it in your mind than verbally, she encourages me to get on the back of the panther, and the panther is going to take me somewhere. And so we're walking through this forest, and I can feel the branches touching me. I can feel the warmth of what basically a desert island would feel like. And we came out of the bush, and there was this waterfall, this really pretty waterfall. And in front of the waterfall, of course, was the sandy beach and this little lake, this little reservoir, whatever you want to call it. And she told me, she said, I want you to swim across the water and go look for that little boy, that little version of myself. And I didn't realize we were doing this part. And so, I'm swimming across the water, and the panther stays back there on the beach, and I'm climbing up this rock face, and I could feel the rush of the waterfall going over my back as I'm like climbing up in between the waterfall and the rock face. And I get up on this ledge, and there's a cave behind the waterfall. So I go into this waterfall, and it's pitch black, but I knew somebody was there. I knew I was there. And I'm calling out to this younger version of myself, and I find this child, and I can't see him with my eyes, but I've seen him in my mind. And I remember I squatted down and I held him. He was cold and he was scared and he was lost, and that represented a time in my life where something had happened, and that energy of that got broken off. And so what we're doing is going back and finding that piece of you that is missing, maybe from a divorce or something, that piece of you that got lost. And that's what that little Wesley represented. And I remember holding him and telling him, I love you. And, I apologized. I said, I'm sorry it took me this long to get here. I didn't know how to get here any quicker. And I asked him what he needed, and he said he just wants to be loved. So I picked him up, and as we came out of the cave, of course it's light and I could see him, and we climbed down the rock face and we swim across the water together. And I remember he wanted to feed the panther, so I reached down and grabbed a fish out of the water, like you can just grab one, but it is a meditation. And in that realm, anything is possible. So I grabbed this fish and he fed it to the panther, and I just remember the joy that they both had. I thought that was interesting. You got to remember they've never experienced anything like this before. And so we get on the panther and we go back through the trees, and when we're on the beach, it was kind of sad because I thought everything was going to be left, but at that point, all of us crossed time and space, by entering the boat and paddling away from the beach. That's what that represented. And so the three of us came back to today. So as we move forward, I knew what one of my spirit animals were. I had connected with them at a very deep level, and I had taken that little boy, and as we came back on the boat, he's sitting in my lap. Our hearts started to connect together, and he started to reabsorb back inside of me. So we went and we found that broken off piece, reconnected, listened to what that little version of myself needed to hear and what I needed. I provided that. It healed that person, that piece, and it reabsorbed back inside. It was really cool. I felt totally different afterwards.
That's really incredible, Wes. Yeah.
Yeah, I do that work now with a lot of people, and you don't have to come see me to do that. You can do that on your own. Might be easier said than done, but you can. Yeah.
And eventually you'll tell us how to do that on our own?
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Just stay at a Holiday Inn, you'll figure it out. So I wanted to share that with you because the spirit animal was integral in the next part of my journey. So I think it was about maybe the 7.5 month mark or so. My daughter calls me. It was September, mid-September. And she says, Daddy, I've been in the hospital for 12 days and they can't figure out what was wrong. Well, she didn't tell me she was in the hospital. And she was worried about me. That's why she didn't tell me. And she's just hysterically crying. She says, my birthday weekend, they're sending me home. They've ran every test and I am so sick. So I knew, since the doctors had done their due diligence and there was something wrong, that it was an energetic thing, that the demons were going after my little girl. They wanted me to take my life. They wanted my life so bad, to be so bad, that I would terminate my own, which was not going to happen. And so I called Santa Grace and I asked her if she could help me, because I knew she could connect through me to connect to my daughter, to do a healing on her. So I think it was a Friday afternoon. I didn't realize she was getting ready to go out of town, and I didn't realize she didn't want to do the work, because at this time I had these little creepy crawlies crawling all over me. They're like having roaches on my skin. They're in my eyes, my ears, my mouth, my rectum, my groin area. If you've seen me, I was just constantly nonstop scratching and moving. It was fucking miserable, and nothing was fixing it. So for her to have to work on me, they're going to crawl on her, and she didn't want to do the work. But one thing Sandra Grace said to me is, you don't want to be you don't want to be a lazy shaman. Now, I don't consider myself a shaman. I'm a healer, but basically, don't be lazy. If somebody needs something, go do it. So she meets me at her office, and it's this little colonial looking building down off Alaskan Road in Virginia Beach. And You have to walk between, it's interesting to get there. You walk around the back of the building between these two brick buildings, and it almost feels like you're stepping back in time back there. It's really cool. So you go up these stairs and this back door. Her office is kind of small. She's got these beautiful crystals and these lights underneath her table, and there's pictures of Jesus on the wall and some other things in there. And she always has a big smile on her face. And so she gives me a hug. We talk for a couple minutes, and I lay on the table. So the room is dimly lit, and it's a massage table with lots of padding, so you're really, really comfortable, and your eyes are covered. So she starts to do this healing session on me, and she's like, look, I've got to fix you before we can get to her. And I'm like, all right. And she had tried to fix me several times, but I wasn't getting better because I didn't love myself. I didn't have enough respect for myself. I didn't have, whatever you want to call that, enough belief that I needed to get better, if that makes sense. So she's doing the work. It's kind of like somebody says, my lungs hurt, but they don't stop smoking, right? But this was different because they're messing with my kid. And she's like, you gotta fucking try. You gotta want to be here. You gotta want to do this. I'm like, I'm gonna do what we gotta do. So I'm laying on the table, and she's never said anything negative to me before. She always says a healer does not harm. That's the first rule. We do not harm. So when you go get a reading and somebody says, oh, I see death in your future, something bad, that person's not a safe person. It's not how it's supposed to work. But she never said anything to me that scared me. And she says, honey, I want you to hear this. You've got a nest of demons inside of you, and I need you to fight. I need you to fight for this. And I remember that really scared me, because I knew there was things in there. I knew there was stuff, but it's the first time somebody really said it out loud. And so she says, my spirit animal is a black panther with black spots, and I'm going to let you use it. And I want you to call your spirit animal in. And she didn't know mine was a black panther. So in my mind, these two black panthers show up, and in my mind's eye, I'm like walking, and they're on either side, and they've got these big collars, right? So, imagine 800 pounds of tiger, you're getting dragged along a little bit. And all of a sudden, my hands, my fingernails are like scratching on the bed, like a lion or something stepping and dragging their nails one than the other. It was really bizarre. And I told Sandra, I said, you're seeing this, right? I mean, obviously my body's doing it, but I'm not consciously moving my hands. And she just starts giggling. She says, guess what? More will be revealed.
Famous last words.
Yeah, right? So I'm laying there and experiencing that. And she said, honey, I want you to have your spirit animals, attack this nest. So in my mind's eye, I'm seeing these tigers they're hitting this big black nest and attacking it. And she's like, do it harder. Do it like you mean it. She said, something shifted when she said that. And you see these tigers hitting this big, is like a black asteroid inside your chest, and a piece broke off, and then another piece broke off, and another piece broke off, and they were like just shattering this, and it all just kind of faded to black. And in the distance, like 3 football fields away, I seen this quarter-size little light up above me. and it was cream colored. Everything was black, but I seen it, and it felt like it was 3 football fields away. And if you're hearing something, that's my German Shepherd, Abby, now wanting to play with toys because we're doing this episode.
She's not getting enough attention.
I remember just the feeling that I had from that light. It was something I'd never experienced before. And you got to realize, I did not have a relationship with Jesus. I didn't know anything about the church. So this light just had this energy, and I didn't understand anything about God. I didn't understand anything about Jesus. We've never really been to church. I didn't know he was a Jew. I didn't know that he was crucified by the Romans. I knew nothing of that. And quite honestly, I didn't fucking care if I knew anything about it. I just wanted to get better. And so the strangest words came out of my mouth. I told her, I said, Sandra Grace, I think it's Jesus. And I don't even know why I said that, because it's not like I seen the guy, it was just this, what it actually ended up being is I recognized the vibration, the feeling of his unconditional love. It's extraordinary. And I said, Sandra, is it Jesus? And she said, yes, honey. She says, why don't you go to him? And I remember stepping forward, and it's like I stepped through 3 football fields in half a step, and I was instantly in front of that light. And I remember that just shocked me. So during this whole time, I'm not in a meditation. I'm laying on the table with my eyes closed with a little thing over the top of it. So, I'm not in a meditation. I'm not taking drugs. I'm not any of that stuff. I'm laying on a table, describing everything to her. And I didn't realize she was able to see everything that I was seeing, which I know how that works now, but I did not then. And I started to hysterically cry. I mean, just the kind of cry that you have when you lose a parent or something, right? And I kept saying, I can't help you. I can't help you. I can't help you. And I don't know why. And all of a sudden, I left that room. And I was on my hands and knees in a place I did not know. So as I'm on my hands and knees looking at the ground, I could hear voices I didn't understand the language. I could smell things, fires and people cooking things in the background. I could feel the heat on my back. I could feel the impression of the rocks on my hands and knees. And as I turned my head to the left, there was this pathway going, and there was 2 people being crucified. And I remember telling Sandra Grace, there's Roman soldiers on the pathway. And I was like, why are there Roman soldiers? Why are people being crucified? I didn't realize that happened. In my mind, that was hundreds of years apart. So they may as well have been dinosaurs. And I could hear these women talking behind me that I knew were related to whomever was in front of me. And I didn't know who that was at the time. It's like walking into a funeral and you're between the casket and the family. You can feel that energy, and you don't have to see the people to know what's going on. And I looked around, and there was trees there that I've never experienced before. And it was just in a foreign place. And I remember as I turned my head and started looking forward, there was this, this post in the ground, this tree post or whatever it was. And as I looked up, there was somebody's feet there. I knew somebody was being crucified in front of me. And as I looked up, Jesus was looking down at me. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? And he lifted his eyes to my eyes, and he didn't say it out loud, but he looked at me and he told me he loved me. I could have taken him saying, I hate you. I could have taken him saying, you are the ugliest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. But I didn't understand him saying he loved me. And I'm bawling. I'm hysterically crying. Now I knew what it was, that I couldn't help him come down. I couldn't take him off of there. And I had this love for him that I did not understand. Like we've been friends forever. And we both looked down the pathway at the same time, and these Roman soldiers were coming closer, and they had these long spears in their hands. And Jesus says, you have to go. You can't stay. And I didn't want to go. And Santa Grace says, ask him your name, honey. And I asked him, I said, Jesus, what is my name? And he said, Michael. I don't know what that means. I kind of looked in the Bible a little bit. It didn't make sense to me. But he said my name was Michael. And he wasn't in pain. You know, he didn't appear to be scared. He wasn't, in agony. He just had this love in his eyes. He had this love in his eyes that I didn't understand. And he says, you have to go. And the second I said I didn't want to, I was like down the pathway 60 or 70 feet, and I turned around. And those 3 Roman soldiers were spitting on him. They were spitting in his face. And these women were standing behind them, crying. And he lifted his eyes to me, and he says, I love you. And you have to go. And as I turned, I was instantly gone. And at the time, I didn't realize where I was at. I do now. I was in the tomb where they had Jesus. Because when in the vision, I remember seeing this low table, and I guess that's where they had him and did the work on him. And I remember thinking the table's too low for it to be, like a dinner table. And Mary was standing in front of me. And she had this white, almost like, it wasn't really a dress, but this white outfit on. And I'm on my knees. There's sand everywhere. And if you've ever been in the desert, that sand, it chokes you. It gets in your throat. And I remember coughing and choking and trying to clear my throat. And I was just sobbing. And I said, I can't help him. And she reached out with her hand and touched my forehead. And I instantly stopped crying just like that. It was bizarre how I stopped crying. She was so beautiful, and her eyes were so beautiful, and she just looked me in the eyes, and she didn't say it out loud, but she said, I love you. And I felt it. I could feel that love from her. I've never felt love before. Not like that. And she handed me this bread, and I'm a chef, so I'm looking at this bread, and I'm trying to think, this flat bread, and it's burnt on both sides, and there's burn marks, and I was ripping it and tearing it, and so I'm thinking, hey, if I'm making this up in my mind, why am I not thinking of a French baguette or something, And it was something I've just never seen before, but I've seen on, I have seen since then on some cooking channels where people in that part of the world make this traditional bread. And I remember ripping it and trying to eat it and how hard it was. And I was telling Sandra Grace everything that was going on, and Mary handed me this cup. And it was a wooden cup, and it was hand carved. You could see where they had carved it, and you could smell the wine and the bittersweet taste of it. And I remember holding it with both hands on my knees and lifting it to take a sip, and she's standing in front of me. And instantly we both looked at the door at the entrance to the little cave or whatever at the same time. And she said in her mind, not with her words, "You have to go. It is not safe here for you." And I said, "I don't want to go." And then we heard something one more time, and I was instantly gone from there. And Jesus took me to the Last Supper. I was not at the table. I was off to the side. The pictures always show him, the pictures I've seen, as he's sitting in the middle of the table. He was not. He was, as I'm looking at it, the far left end of the table, somewhat at the head of the table, and there's people bringing in grapes and bread and stuff, and I was only there a few seconds, and he has this, Jesus is kind of funny, actually. But he had this little smirk on his face, and he rolled his eyes up at me and just kind of smiled. And I don't know why he showed me that, but he just did, and instantly we're gone. And I was on my spirit animal, walking in this blackness. I could hear the demons slithering and crawling all around me. I was freaking terrified. I had been tormented for months at this point. I mean, I was almost panicked being on that table because I could feel them, I could see them, I could smell them, I could hear them, whispering and saying things and coming, and they're coming. And off into the distance, I seen those two little quarter-sized lights. It was Jesus and Mary, and they were cream-colored. And I remember looking down, and I had this white outfit on with this rope, like for a belt, and I had a spear in my hand. I'm like, why in the hell where are all the spears coming from, right? But there was this light coming off my chest, maybe like the brightness of a night light in a dark room. They were so close. I mean, they're almost touching us. And I don't know why I said this, but I just yelled out loud, "My name is Michael, and I walk with Jesus Christ." And this light exploded from my chest, and I remember jumping. It shocked me. And I was shocked that the light was coming from me. I was shocked it was just beyond comprehension of what was going on. And all of a sudden, the demons started to pull away. And I'm like, "Oh, you giving a Marine some opportunity?" I was literally sitting there, laying there saying, "Fuck you, motherfuckers. Fuck you. I'm going to get your fucking ass." I don't know what I'm going to get them with, but they are for the first time pulling away. And I remember, I looked up, and it was almost like Jesus and Mary watching their child. You're watching your child learn how to ride a bike for the first time. And then I knew they brought me there to step into my power. They brought me there to show that the light that I was seeking was within me. That the salvation that I'm seeking is within me. is not somewhere else. It's not in drugs. It's not in alcohol. It's not in a woman. It's not in a relationship. It's not down the street. It's not in a fucking pill. It's not in a doctor's office. It's in me. And I kind of sat back and I breathed in deep and I said, my name is Wesley and I walk with Jesus Christ. And that light just exploded out of my chest. And you could hear them screaming and running and crawling. And I said it one more time. I may have cussed a little bit. But I said, my name is Wesley Coons and I walk with Jesus Christ. And the light just was like the sun coming in. And the demons were pushing away, and they went over the tops of the hills. And I realized Jesus took me to the valley of death. And as they left over the side of the hill, there was nothing but just green grass, and there was this pathway. And Jesus had left. They just kind of faded away. And I remember that this peace came over me that I was going to be okay. And for about 20 or 30 seconds, you know, I'm riding on the spirit animal and I could just kind of feel the sway of the animal going back and forth. And I remembered my daughter, Sydney. And I said to Sandra Grace, I said, Sandra Grace, we got to help Sydney. And instantly I left there and I was walking up behind Sydney in her house. She was watching, oh God, I forget the name of the show.
I want to say Golden Girls.
Golden Girls, yes. She's watching Golden Girls because that's what she loves. And the panther reached out and slapped her, and all these black shards came off. And we instantly turned around and left. And we're back in the valley of death walking. And then everything just started to fade. I started to come back, and you know, I was back in the room. And I remember Sandra Grace pulled the little blindfold thing, a little thing covered my eyes off, and she had this look on her face. I'm like, what the fuck was that? And she's like, oh my God, this is one of the best top 3 experiences. I said, that's only in the top 3? I said, what was number 1? I mean, this is crazy. And I remember asking her, I said, was it real? And she says, yes, honey, it was real. And I didn't call my daughter that night. I went home, and when I left the building, this rainstorm had come in over that building, and the steam coming off the streets, and there was this calmness in the trees, and you know, Alaskan Road is pretty busy, and there was just no cars, no nothing, and it was just so real getting in my Jeep and going home. I mean, I didn't even go home. I was living in the trailer, in the camper at the campground. And so I called my daughter the next morning. This was about 6:15. And I said, hey, baby, how are you feeling? She says, Daddy, I just instantly felt good around 6:30 last night. I got to go out for my birthday dinner. I mean, how do you explain that? How do you explain that she's instantly better at the exact, basically, time that we finished, and she didn't know we did the work? So it's not like I told her, hey, I'm going to do something, I'm going to help you. That to me said everything. And then I called my buddy Ty, and we talked about it, and the things that I researched. You know, there was 3 people being crucified that day, and you know, just everything lined up. And when I looked up, walking through the valley of death, you know, they talk about being in green pastures. You know, when it was over, I was on the green pastures, and he says that he's going to lead me in the path of righteousness as we were on this path going through this green grass. And it says, thy rod and thy staff will comfort me. this was for me like waking up and knowing how to pull a Corvette engine out of a Corvette, take it apart and rebuild it. You know, I've got a Maserati. I put fucking gas in the car, all right? I don't do those things. So for me to understand that is crazy, but I understood these parts of the Bible that were real, and these experiences and these things were showed to me that were described in the Bible. I just remember just being so shocked, just knocked over shocked. And wait until I tell you, Andrea, the day he gave me the golden armor of God.
Ooh.
That was extraordinary, but nothing like this. But I was so broken when he told me he loved me. I did not know how to comprehend that. But I remember one thing. I remember what it felt like to be in his presence. And it is the most beautiful, most extraordinary thing I've ever experienced in my life. That vibration, that unconditional love that he carries is, I don't know, I'll never forget it. And I cannot wait to feel that again.
Wes, that leaves me with so many questions. That was amazing. I mean, that moving, I don't even know how to put it into words. I don't know how you put it into words.
It's a lot. And one thing, you know, I've thought about this episode since we started. And you know, somebody asked me, he said, how are you going to convince people? I'm not going to convince anybody. You know. And this message is for the believers. This message is for people like me that were broken. We could do something different. And we're going to do something different. And I don't know why he chose me to go through this journey, but I made a promise that I am not going to turn my back on you. And I can promise you, I am not a religious person. I'm a spiritual person that is connected to Jesus Christ, because I know that motherfucker and I talk to that dude and I talk like this is who I am. And if you know me, you're sitting in your car laughing right now, but he's real. You know, he's not locked in this big tower saying, oh, you know, everything's got to be this certain way. He's pretty funny. You know, he's like a regular person that is just extraordinarily beautiful. And it's been a journey that I could never have imagined. And I'm eternally grateful for it.
And we're grateful that you're sharing it with us.
Thank
and I
you.
like to think of Jesus as not only unconditional love, but funny too. Like,
He is. He is. You know, I've asked him to show me how, you know, if I was at his crucifixion, then I was there. So I had a relationship with him at some level. And, you know, I have asked him to show me some of those, and he has showed me some of those visions of us doing things together, being at places together, and we'll share about that in future episodes.
nice. I can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
All right. Thank you, Wes. And thank all of you for listening. And head on over if you're listening to this like a day behind, because we're going to have some behind the scenes questions and answers to this very emotional and just really intriguing episode. So thank you.
It'll be fun.
You've been listening to Enlightenment Unknown with Wes Coons, your guide on the quest for self-discovery and the version of you we haven't met yet.